What's up, guys? Thomas Mott here, joined by Josh Davis. Welcome to the Wednesday Link Live. Josh, the Eagles are 1-1. It's a beautiful Wednesday in Atlanta. Hopefully the same in Atlanta. Or in Dallas. How are you doing?
I'm doing all right. Yes, the weather is okay, I suppose.
Okay.
The temperature is a little warm still, so I would love to get some fall weather. Maybe to cool things off. Certainly could use that from how the Eagles played or did not play, the lack
Yeah,
thereof, I guess.
sure.
You know, I just really did not expect to, and I know that everybody's right there because it was the 99.3% chance we should have won with a minute 56 remaining. So,
I know.
but here we are. We're
Here
talking
we
about
are.
it on a Wednesday, and I think it was the seventh most unlikely comeback ever, or collapse, however we want to phrase that, according to Next Gen since 2016. So it's like,
Sure.
okay, great, love that dubious award. That's fantastic. It does feel a little bit like a lot of the tail end of last season's get together because you see the similarities and you see the not being able to close things out. I'm not saying that we're going in that same direction, and it's very early, so that's the positive, that's the promising part that you can turn things around here. But yeah, I mean, there's several different questions. I don't know if you want to start anywhere in particular. I know we titled it as far as the answers on the D line, but
Yes.
there are several areas.
I had an idea. I didn't run this by you, but I had a comment on my show today that said, with Thomas being the eternal pessimist and Josh being the eternal optimist, watching both shows is the perfect combination to be right in the middle, right? You get the good from me, the good from you, the bad from me, apparently. And so people, that's what one person said, is why they watch both of our
Okay.
shows combined. So I decided to mix things up a little bit here, Josh. Since I'm the eternal pessimist and you're the eternal optimist, according to this person, which I don't know if I agree with, but I would say you're a little bit more optimistic than me. Let's switch
Okay.
places. So you be the pessimist right now, Josh. Josh,
All right.
what is the biggest concern with the Philadelphia Eagles right now? What has you pessimistic about them going forward?
The defensive line.
There you
First
go.
off,
It's
there's
pretty
other
simple.
areas, but it's the defensive line. It's atrocious.
It's
There
bad.
there are reasons for. I mean, let's think back to this past training camp, off season, and
Yeah.
then start with off season, then the training camp, then preseason, leading on up into it. I know that we had questions of, hey, how are the linebackers going to play? How are the safeties going to play? We can get there. It's not like they're perfect, but you look at this team, and the thought is, hey, okay, Jalen Carter, take that next step. Jordan Davis, will he take the first step? Can we get him to do that? And we see that, okay, Nolan Smith, maybe some more reps. BG's going to be here, but Josh Sweat having a reason to play well
Yep.
for a contract. You make a gamble on Bryce Huff, but heck, that's a decent amount of money. You want him to be able to play in a full-time role. He played well as a situational pass rusher. Can he do that? I mean, Thomas, we're sitting here with one quarterback hit between the edge rushers in 2 games,
It's crazy.
and the pressure numbers are terrible. We've seen it. We could have made the disclaimer, which I did from week 1, of saying, okay, it's a bad field. Everyone was there. It's the slipping and sliding and all
Yeah.
that, but that's not an excuse for playing in Philly and against a quarterback, as we were also saying, for the immobile situation that Kirk Cousins is in, and you can't move him off the spot to save your life. So
Yeah.
for me to sit here, and if you were to ask me what is the weakest point on our defense, I know it's early, so I'll clarify that, but the weakest point on our defense, it's the defensive line. And I never, ever would have thought that I would have said that even 2 weeks in.
And it's not like it's weak or like, they're getting close. You and I always preface this when we do live shows together. We are not film experts. There are plenty of other channels that do a great job of all 22, breaking down the
For sure.
angles. Here's this, post route, and it's supposed to open up the flat, and so naturally, blah, blah. No, we're not like that, right? But we are fans of the game. We've been fans our entire lives, and we know what's good and what's bad. The film that they have put out on Bryce Huff and really the entire Eagle defensive line, it is atrocious. It's not close. And the best example, Josh, is the amount of times that Bryce Huff and Josh Sweat, by the way, who should be getting basically equal criticism because Sweat has done nothing better than Bryce Huff. But both, especially the 2 defensive ends, they're being blocked one-on-one multiple times in that Falcons game by tight ends, which you put Nick Bosa, and I know Bryce Huff's not Nick Bosa, I know, but you put any
True.
decent defensive end on a tight end, and we scream mismatch. That's how Brock Purdy got hurt in the NFC title game because George Kittle, one of the best tight ends in the league, was trying to block Hassan Reddick and got absolutely sunned. Like, it does not work in the NFL. It is coaching
No.
malpractice to do. And yet they did it multiple times and had no problems with it. It's stunning how bad it is. And I almost feel like we were gaslit a little bit because, you and I are not at training camp. And people know by now, but the way our shows work is we are taking the news, and it's this massive waterfall of news from beat writers and reporters and TV personalities and press conferences, and we filter it all down for you in a 10-minute, 15-minute, easily digestible YouTube show, right? That's what we do. So we're not nobody in terms of just some random guy in the street who talks about the Eagles, but we're not in the actual locker room. We're in this little middle gray ground that is what is, I think, the best part of YouTube. But all we heard during training camp, Josh, was that Jalen Carter looks unbelievable, Josh. Oh, my goodness, Jalen Carter is he's something. Jalix Hunt has had quite the camp. Nolan Smith looks so much bigger and better. Now, the one person we didn't hear much about was Bryce Huff, but the Jalen Carter gaslighting was crazy. I think that Jordan Davis was too. I thought for sure you were going to have a top 3 defensive tackle this year in Jalen Carter, and so far this year, I don't think he's top 10. I mean, I did a stat on my show today, Josh, and I'm rambling, but last stat. Thomas Booker played 8 snaps against the run. I think it was 8, either 6 or 8, right? They allowed 6 yards rushing on those 6 snaps. The rest of the defensive line without him allowed 144. And Thomas Booker in that Falcons game had more quarterback hits and quarterback hurries than Carter, Smith, Huff, Davis, and Sweat combined in that game, which is the most crazy stat you could ever possibly have. So it's wild. It's just so wild that the defensive line is the one thing that we are all jumping off cliffs going, this is unbelievably bad, because it truly has been through 2 games.
For sure. And I mean, also, if that's your optimistic spin, then I don't know where to go.
Well, no, I didn't get to my optimistic spin. No, I was trying to just compound off the pessimistic.
It's totally fair, but I was sitting there going like, okay, I don't know how it could go actually.
That is the negative spin. Sure.
That's pretty much all of it up front.
Yeah.
I guess to throw in something else too, you mentioned with the tight ends, this is a little bit off of topic there, but you're right. If you're going up against a tight end, you better win that matchup. Like Bryce Huff, you got to win that. Certainly if you're going up against, our tight ends. Now that's another case in point, but if you saw Grant Calcaterra block or EJ Jenkins, it's not blocking. So I guess we can't even call it that, but whatever they tried to do there, it was just a couple reps, one in particular where it's like, you hand the ball off to Saquon Barkley, you might as well just have 2 of those guys get on the other side of the field because they're not doing anything to help. They're literally getting in the way. I mean, Grant Calcaterra, I think, pushed Goddard out of the way. Like he was blocking Goddard more than he was the defender. So anyway, that's getting off on a different tangent there. But yeah, defensively, I'm not at the point of, and I do understand, like, hey, look, Jalen Carter's got to be better. Interesting scenario as far as like he got benched to start the game.
That was weird.
Like
no one's
it's
talking
not
about
college.
that, Josh.
I know, and I'm curious to get your thoughts on this too. But it's like this is not college. I'm totally fine with discipline, right? Like that's cool. There's team rules for a reason. Yes, you have to hold people accountable. Yes, you have to hold them to the fire. An NFL player, and I'm just throwing this out there. I'm not so sure that the best way to discipline an NFL player is to be like, oh, well, you're not going to play the first drive. Now, I know that Jalen Carter wants to get out there. I know that he loves football. I know that he's going to want to be out there. But can we not just say, hey, you're fined? Like the team fine him, right? Say, okay, and if it's because I can't imagine, it's like, okay, you played what? 1 series he didn't play. Does that mean it's like 1/16 of his paycheck, his game paycheck that they took away for it because he wasn't able to get out there on the field? Or is it just, oh, no, you didn't play the first drive. Okay, now go ahead and insert yourself. Like it's such a weird, random discipline kind of thing that's going on there. I'm like, I get that Fangio, yes, he's old school, he's old fashioned.
Yeah.
But I mean, come on. That one felt like if you're going to have someone out there and you want to discipline, just fine him and say, move on, right? Don't do it again. It could be a bigger penalty next time. Just fine him and move on.
Yeah, I think it's interesting, though. Like, either it's just Fangio being kind of the old school weirdness that we've heard, or at least I say the old school honesty. I'm excited to hear him talk to the media tomorrow, by the way. I think it's going to be fascinating. Yeah. But I do think it's a bad look for Jalen Carter. I mean, now, again, being late to a meeting and missing the first series, he obviously wasn't 5 minutes late, Josh. He wasn't 7 minutes late. I mean, clearly this was big enough to make a big deal out of it, and then goes totally silent. Like, okay, no one's asked any questions. I mean, it's just like he didn't play the first series because he missed a meeting. Whatever, move on. To me, it's kind of a big deal. He is supposed to be not only the best player on this defense, but The whole idea of drafting Jalen Carter and Jordan Davis was to replace not only the play style of Fletcher Cox and, I mean, I guess some of the other rotation of defensive tackles that had, been there, some of the other really good ones that they had, but the leadership aspect of it. And Fletcher Cox wasn't missing meetings. I mean, that virtually never happened. Brandon Graham's not late to meetings. And so I do wonder, because he's played poorly as well, if there's any sort of concern with a guy like Jalen Carter or anybody else in this defensive line. I don't think missing a meeting is warranted of that, but I do think it's enough to at least be like, hey, like, what's going on? Like, it just, if the defensive line was playing well, Josh, and Jalen Carter had 3 sacks right now, this would be a total non-issue. We would all go, boneheaded mistake. But you go, they're playing terribly, and he's missing a meeting already. And then I know it was just a clip on Twitter, but he's smiling after the game when you would think he would be upset, which I didn't really want to talk about because to me it rubbed me the wrong way, but it probably was just like, hey, you're with your buddies, it's a football game, whatever. But I don't know. I'm just getting weird vibes from this defense that we were sold a bill of goods that it was going to be different. And while the secondary is kind of different, minus that final drive, overall, it looks exactly the same as last year, if not a little worse, because Fletcher Cox is not in the middle helping anchor that defense.
Speaking of Fletcher Cox, too, by the way, I mean, I appreciate the fact that he called out Jordan Davis specifically, and I would assume Jalen Carter, how close that they were last year. I don't think that I saw a quote specifically with his name. I saw a specific quote for Jordan Davis, but he said he texted a couple different players, and after week 2, like, this is unacceptable, and that's how everyone feels. It's totally unacceptable. But hey,
how are
get
we already
mad
at that point?
That's where I'm saying it's like it's Groundhog Day. We're reliving what happened last year by week 2, and I did not think that. I felt like, hey, we'll get to the bye week. We can make it to the bye week before we really start to see our wheels falling off. And I'm not saying wheels are falling off, but before we see semblances of, oh, hey, hang on, that looks familiar. But we're 2 weeks in here, and I don't know now. There's always the eternal optimist. So I will, even though I'm supposed to be pessimistic here, to insert this though.
Go ahead.
It is, and I know that everything's a little bit different. So case in point, but we could think about Hassan Reddick in 2022. Had 0 sacks, 4 tackles, and that's it. And everybody was going like, oh my gosh, he's supposed to be so much better than this. And he ended the season with 16 and a half sacks. So I don't know that I've got the confidence level to say, oh, hey, Jalen Carter is going to, have this fantastic year and be an all-pro. But I think there's a couple individual players that have, in my mind, a little bit earned that right because of seeing what they can do. And I think Jalen Carter can flip that switch. Jordan Davis, there's no I'm going to be honest. There's no confidence for me to say he can flip that switch because we haven't seen it enough. There's not and even in practice, because, okay, you hear a little bit of, okay, Jordan Davis made a good play. But in practice, you're even talking about like Jalen Carter blows up my guy back to Jalen Carter, tosses Tyler Steen aside. Jalen Carter just rips through Cam Jurgens and gets a sack. Like, it's just every single time. And the offensive line has played well. So it's not like he wasn't getting a good competition throughout training camp of the preseason. So for me, I mean, I get it. I understand. I don't knock the fact that, like, he needs to be a leader and he should be showing up to these meetings. So that's not a good look. But ultimately, when we talk about just playing on the field, I'm not worried about Jalen Carter yet. I know that he hasn't put up the numbers. So holistically, defensive line needs to be much better. But if we want to go individually, I think Jalen Carter he'll be fine. He had a bad game. Okay, sure. We're 2 weeks in. The unit as a whole is not doing well. We understand that. But I mean, yes, we need to call out some other guys, but Bryce Huff, man, like,
it's pretty bad.
It's
shockingly bad.
It's terrible. It is. He is. And I think I mentioned this either in a show or a live stream, but I'm like, he's living up to the Agent Zero name for all of the wrong reasons. Like, he's 0 on the board. He's pulling a Tony Snell.
Nothing.
I mean, it is go out there, collect a paycheck, and you're not going to record a single stat. It's terrible. And we looked at it and say, again, Brazil is somewhat excusable because you see players slipping. Green Bay had players on that side too. You go to week 2, and there's some clips. I mean, I'm sure you saw one of them that really went viral, but there's several of those. But one in particular where he's in his stance, takes the snap, and just immediately kind of stumbles forward and just falls on his face, basically. And it's like, okay, well, that play's over. You're not going to need a rush. I know it's just one play, but when you say, all right, the dude played another 30-ish snaps and was not able to register anything, then $51 million, that's just, I don't know. And I know we've seen this. We've said it about Hassan Reddick. but it feels different because I don't recall Haas saying, I need to find myself in the system. I need to
Yeah,
learn the
how about that
system.
quote?
The unit is
Oof.
not really cohesive yet. I need to talk with the coaches to work on what I need to do as an individual. And with that to me screams concern and alarming way more than just Haas started out slow. He started out slow in 2023 even, but it's
Mhm.
different than just starting out slow versus I think that Huff is thinking and he's not playing, if that makes sense. I think that he's just thinking way too much and you're not getting the pass rusher that you bargained for, that you hope for.
Yeah, well, as much as we were gaslit on, say, Jalen Carter and Jordan Davis during training camp, we were not gaslit on Bryce Huff because Vic Fangio
No.
tried to warn all of us, and listen, I think both of us were wrong in this sense that anytime there would be a report, Bryce Huff with a nice play, we're like, ooh, there it is, all right. And in reality, Fangio is on the podium being like, guys, he's got to play in the preseason. Like, he's not ready. We're like, no,
I know.
he's just being hard on him.
He'll be fine.
And
then
we
he
were
did it
wrong.
against New England in the preseason
Yeah,
game, and it's just a
yeah.
few snaps. But I was ready because I'm like, hey, he played better. And Fangio even said, yep, he showed some things.
Yeah.
Not going to the full extent of saying he's ready, but he showed some things and pulled him out early. So you're like, okay, this is the guy. This is who we wanted.
No, we were wrong.
And yeah, I don't know. I don't know that that's there.
Let's go to some comments because people are fired up. Appreciate you guys joining us. Give the show a thumbs up. Let's go to Super Chat. John Licori. Chris Long's unrealistic trade idea. 2 first-rounders, a third, and Pickett to the Browns for Myles Garrett. Who says no? I think it'd probably take 3 first-rounders to get Myles Garrett, Josh. I would do that in a heartbeat because, that's a generational pass rusher, but I think it would take a lot to go ahead and do. Not a super chat, but I see here from Andrew, he's a member. Watch clips from the All-22. Huff is really bad. We need to make a trade and bring somebody in. We're going to talk about that in a second. There's an update on Hassan Reddick. How about Eric Guzman? Eric, I think it's Guzman. He says, why doesn't Hurts throw to Goddard more? Is it something personal? Great question, Josh. I asked on my show today, and it was kind of more just in jest. It's like, there's an APB out for Dallas Goedert. He doesn't exist. For whatever reason, the Eagle offense, Kellen Moore forgot that Dallas Goedert existed. And I'm pretty sure somebody abducted Jahan Dotson and is holding him for ransom and has put out some sort of average, UPS driver type of skill in a Jahan Dotson costume and putting him out there. Because Jahan Dotson, you want to talk about getting gaslit. We gave him a 3rd-round draft pick for a guy who basically doesn't commit to do anything on offense. And the first week in Brazil, you're like, yeah, but, he's got to figure it out. It's only been like 3 weeks. And now it's like, okay, we're choosing to throw the football to Covey, who I think has improved. I like Britton Covey. It's some nice screens for him. He did a lot better job than Quez Watkins. But that 3rd-round draft pick looks like we literally took it and lit it on fire. It was an absolute waste because Dotson has been completely useless. But Goddard's got to get more involved. Although, to be the eternal optimist that you always are, according to our commenters, as I'm apparently the eternal pessimist, I will say offense has very little concern. I mean, we are a Saquon Barkley catch away from being 2-0 and still having defensive concerns, but being 2-0 and feeling good about the offense. To me, Jalen played a completely clean game minus the final throw where he was pressing. Jalen has not been a very clutch quarterback from behind in the past, why Philadelphia has struggled so much when they have leads with 2 minutes to go, and then they blow the lead, and then, of course, they can't come back. And so for him to throw a pick wasn't a super shock to me. It's a massive bummer because they were so close. But overall, without A.J. Brown against what I consider a top 10 defense, the offense seems fine. Offensive line is humming. They look great. Even without Jason Kelce, there's no problems there. Smitty's playing well. Saquon is a top 3 back in the league right now. Hurts running the football extremely well in that second half. There's no concern there, Josh. The problem that I have is you are going to have to score 28 plus a game to keep this team above relevant, because I think either way they're going to be a relevant football team because the way the NFC East is kind of structured and the rest of the NFC is kind of weak. But if you actually want to win a playoff game, you're going to have to score 30 points a game with the current state of the defense. And you mentioned Reddick's slow start last year. Yes, that happened. But I've seen nothing in the film that I've watched to tell me that this defensive line is going to magically play the Saints on Sunday and be like 4 sacks, Derek Carr's running for his life, so on and so forth. And honestly, it's kind of triggering me because the secondary is so much improved. Like if you take the secondary and insert them to the 2023 defense or the 2022 defense, I mean, league's better than what it was. They're playing great. Quinyon was a little up and down. He was bad on that final drive. He's playing well. I'm going to ask you about Isaiah Rodgers in a second here, but overall, the offense to me seems ready to rock. They seem like they can compete with anybody in the NFC. The defense seems to probably be bottom 3 in the league right now, and that's not going to take you very far.
No, it's not. We said you need like a top 15. You just average, just middle of the pack.
17th at this
roughly
point.
There. Yeah,
it's
something. And you're going to be okay. And we haven't seen it. So, yeah, you need to be at that level. Shout out to Aiden Sofianos, by the way. Welcome to the Breed of One membership tier. Appreciate that. Speaking of Jalen, so there you go. Access to the monthly Zoom call last Friday of every month. So we'll get the link as far as being a member there, but appreciate that. But yeah, Jalen is fine. Jalen, great numbers against the blitz. The only really negative, as you said, was the turnover there at the end. It is an issue, but I do appreciate the fact that Jalen admitted it in the press conference today. And, he's like, hey, I got to learn from that. That was a moment where I wish I could have it back. And knowing the time on the clock was probably not a good opportunity or not a good chance to take that shot, knowing we had other plays or other downs because there was still a timeout in play. So, to hear Jalen say that, you might not have heard that in the past, for one, but
Maybe.
Also it's like you have him. He's somewhat been like this, but he's also been coached this way of like a Sirianni offense. Hey, take the big shot, take the home run, hit the home run plays. And so it's probably a little bit of unlearning that type of play because now Kellen Moore is like, look, we don't always have to. Sometimes, sure, if the defense dictates it, yeah, take a big shot. If not, take what the defense gives you. And you saw that for the most part against the blitz. Drops back, he sees the field better, he knows immediately where the hot route is, and you get it out. You could think about one in particular where he goes to Dallas Goedert there. Now, I didn't target him much at all, and it'd be great to get him involved, especially when you don't have A.J. Brown. So it's a whole nother story. I don't know if it's a game plan situation where I can't imagine that it's Jalen being at odds with Dallas Goedert. Like I've seen those comments out there and the speculations and like conspiracy, but Jalen he's going to throw to Dallas Goedert. Like they're fine. It's just for some reason he was either not looking his way or based on the way that there were some blitzes and stuff, he wasn't getting him the ball near as much. Britton Covey, there's certainly a connection there. So it's not like we can say there's no reasons because Jalen's throwing it to him 6 times or 6 catches. And he had more targets than Dotson and Goddard combined, which is another very unusual statistic, I think, that we would have not expected to see beforehand. But, we also had mentioned, well, what if Covey becomes like a Cole Beasley? What if he's similar to Kellen Moore usage there? And so you saw some elements in Covey's game where that happened. I don't think long-term that's the answer because, yes, you traded a 3rd-round pick to get a Jahan Dotson who should be able to make most all the plays that you saw Covey make. It's just you didn't put him in those spots. So I don't know if it's taken him longer to learn the play, but it doesn't make sense that it would. And we remember too, he had the press conference or kind of the sidebar conversation that the Eagles posted talking about, is he ready? And that he was ready and that he's going to step up and he's knows the playbook and it's not a whole lot of differences. They just call it different things, but they're basically the same types of plays.
Sure.
And, I took that at least relatively, like at face value because like the Eagles, they don't post every single like sidebar conversation in the locker room. Nope. They kind of pick and choose. And so and it was only that clip. It was like a 2-minute or 3-minute clip of Jahan Dotson, and that's it. It's not other players that were going to it. So I'm like, okay, so AJ's out. Jahan Dotson's going to get a bigger role. We heard Sirianni say that, heard him say that he's ready. And then you get a conversation from Jahan Dotson of him echoing the same type of sentiment there. So it was kind of like, yeah, I'm expecting that they're going to get him going. Now, I don't think that anybody, and myself included, was saying, oh, he's going to go out there and have 7 catches, 100 yards, a touchdown.
Right.
But still, go out there and make a difference. Have 4 catches, 50 yards, just move the sticks, do something. And we didn't see that. So I am hopeful that it will be different. It needs to be. There's not a massive concern on the offense. Yet, at the end of the day, we could still somewhat make the argument. It goes both ways, but the offense only scored 21 points. And we've said all along, if the offense scores 30 points, the defense should be good enough to win you every game.
Sure.
They only scored 21 points. Now, kudos to Atlanta because it's not like they're a slouch on defense. They do have some playmakers, and they were able to limit things in terms of keep things in front of them with not big explosive plays. But ultimately, if this team is healthy, we're going to see an offense firing on all cylinders. If A.J. Brown's out, if Saquon Barkley's out, if Smitty's out, then, you start to kind of wonder a little bit, because we've seen that if it's not hitting consecutively or consistently with those playmakers, then I don't know. Like I hope that Jahan Dotson can be that extra guy. We were sold on that, and Howie Roseman made the trade for a reason. But so far, much like a couple other moves and trades, I don't exactly know. You got Devin White inactive. Isaiah Rodgers, you mentioned a second ago, did not play, was active, did not play. It's just kind of unusual. These guys that you expected to maybe have a little bit of a bigger role, and they're basically not doing anything, or they're not at all, and they're just inactive.
Yeah. No, I mean, you could go with Joshua here, and he says, Super Chat, appreciate that. We need to relax. We need the defense was going to take some time to catch up to our offense. It's week 2. We have a good red zone defense. Just need our D line to get home. We have the talent to do that. I would disagree, but I'm going to give you that and say, okay, but that means you got to play well against the Saints, because the Saints hung like a 40 burger on the Cowboys. They have the capacity to do that against us on Sunday. And if that's the case, it's going to be like, if the Eagles get killed on Sunday, it is going to be DEFCON 1, Nick Sirianni hot seat, and crazy media week. People are going to go insane. Like genuinely a 1-2 start.
We won't, by the way. I've got a reason for it, but
okay. Well, I think if we lose by 20 against the Saints, Josh, you're not going to freak out at all?
No, I will, but we're not going to. I'm very confident. Okay. We're either going to win, or the Saints are going to beat us, and it's going to be an extremely close game.
There you go. There's the eternal optimist that we love so much. There it is.
Well, I'm going based off of Vegas, so the line
minus.
Here's my thought.
Plus
right?
3 now.
It's plus. I think the last is it plus 3 now? I thought the last I saw was like plus 2.
I thought
it may be plus. It may have bumped up to plus 3, which would still make sense because people are jumping on. But here's my thought. Right, so Vegas setting the line. It opened up as the Saints minus 1.5. If people are looking at this and going, okay, Saints blow out the Carolina Panthers, who cares? No big deal, right? Then you go to Dallas and you shred the Dallas Cowboys. You just completely obliterate them. And then people see on prime time the Eagles collapse, the Eagles defense can't stop anybody, and you're like, okay, so the Falcons did that, and you got the best offense in football with the Saints that are humming, and now they're going to be playing at home, and the shortened week, and the Eagles got to go there, yet Vegas is setting the line at 1.5. So I'm just saying. I know that logically sometimes things don't make sense, but I'm just going logically with Vegas. I'm not saying we're going to win, but if we lose, it will be a close game. I could be dead wrong. I'm just going with the Vegas odds there. So we'll see.
Let's hope you're right. Bearded Willie 21 says, hey, guys, great show. Appreciate you guys. Appreciate that. We appreciate you guys hanging out with us. We have 540 people watching. I saw a comment earlier from DJC asking where to get a official Thomas Mott Show t-shirt, which actually came in yesterday. I'm wearing it for the first time. We went with the upgraded actual t-shirts when Josh and I made these. This is like the best fitting shirt I actually own, which I'm very excited about because it's like my own little, my little logo there. So pretty pumped. But for those people who are wondering where you go ahead and pick one up, it's down below in my description box. It's like the top part of the description box. So there is the official. It's the phillylink.com. There is the Thomas Mott Show shirt. And it turns out we actually have, I don't think it's actually showing yet. So here we go. Boom, there it is. And then there's a bunch of other shirts. So if you are an Eternal Optimist, you want to get the Eternal Optimist shirt, then you can go ahead and pick up Josh's. Let's run it.
There you go.
Right here. There you go. Big
or
big
if
seller.
you remind Sirianni what play to run, just say let's run it instead of pass it.
There you go.
So
there you go. Very simple. And then, of course, the other designs, which I just got the Slim Reaper one right here, came in the new t-shirt style as well. So everyone who's ordered one is getting the upgraded t-shirt style. The ones we ordered in the beginning for ourselves were the lesser, and then now the new ones have come in, and personally, I think they are absolutely fantastic. So big fan, but if you guys want to pick one up, that's how you do it. I'll put the link in both of our comment sections right there if you guys want to check those out. More comments here as we have another super chat. Dylan says, they White as an edge might be better than Huff. Devin White as an edge might be better than Huff. I've seen this whole idea that you got to get, you play Devin White as pass rusher just to kind of, or in blitz situations. I don't know if, he's not Micah Parsons, right? So I don't know if I'm necessarily, exactly saying that. But the fact Devin White has been a healthy scratch, the first week, whatever, second week to me is still very odd. You want to talk about being gaslit, and I keep saying that, but he was a LB1 the entire training camp. And to beat Devin White and to be like, okay, I took less money. I'm going to go to Philly. I'm going to revamp my career. And then you're told, you're the guy. Here, we're proving it. You're the guy. No, he's not the guy. Apparently, it's so bizarre to me. And the same goes for Isaiah Rodgers. Rodgers was cornerback 2 behind Darius Slay all of training camp. He beat out Kelee Ringo. He apparently went ahead and beat out, Quinyon Mitchell as well. But for whatever reason, they play Quinyon Mitchell in the slot all training camp long. He plays very little outside cornerback in the end. And then whenever you have an outside cornerback injury, or I guess in terms of Isaiah Rodgers, you move him outside, which makes sense. But then when Rodgers comes back, you still don't put Quinyon back to the place where you'd been training him all training camp long. It's so weird. Quinyon's great. I love him. He's going to be a Pro Bowler, in my opinion, one of these years. Isaiah Rodgers, you got to know what you have. You've got to at least know what you have. And if you're saying, well, they must know he's not good, why did he start almost every single training camp practice the final 3 weeks of training camp? It does not make any sense.
It doesn't. I'm right there with you. It's the only thing, but it's they make him active. The argument that I was trying to figure out a way that makes work that you can make it work is like, okay, maybe the hand. It's just like it's kind of good enough where you absolutely had to have him. You can get him out there on the field, but they don't want to rush it. They don't want to re-injure anything. So let's just give it another week. We'll let Q start. Kelee Ringo can go in if you need him to. And then, like I say, worst case scenario, if Isaiah Rodgers has to go in there. But it doesn't make sense to me. I'm with you because he seemed to prove that based off of camp. And, like Q did fine. There were a couple mistakes, certainly on the last drive there. Who's to say, if Zay's in there, I'm not going to just automatically, oh, yeah, well, that for sure wouldn't have happened because the defensive line wasn't getting a pass rush. So they still might have just marched right on down the field. But you just question and wonder that. I don't know. There's several different areas where you just say, I guess, first off, it can't get worse than what it is now. Exactly. I mean, can it? Like it's basically dead last in a lot of different categories already. And I mean, shout out to Anthony DeBona, but he was the first one I think that I saw brought this up. But it is an interesting thought. If you really are struggling to get pass rush and how he's not willing to go out and make a move for somebody, the first, or maybe he wants to see if the internal guys can do something before he makes a move.
Sure.
It's not out of the question that all of a sudden you say, hey, Zach Bond, we had you as the off-ball linebacker. We're going to move you to edge because nobody else can get any pressure. Let's just see if that works.
Why not?
And then, is it Devin White that steps up there now? Or is it a situation where you move to a Jeremiah Trotter Jr.? Who knows? Because you could go with someone else there. But if you're not getting any pressure, say what you will about Devin White, but he's been a good blitzing linebacker. So, I mean, heck, let's do something and move some guys around. So, I don't know. You keep coming back to questions of, you felt like these were going to be guys to make plays and at least have some sort of role on this team, specifically with the defense. But so far, 2 weeks in, you haven't seen anything. Now I know that Fangio probably will be, a little bit slower or maybe more patient with saying like, oh, we'll give it time. It's going to be okay. And blah, blah. It'll be curious to see what he says in the press conference tomorrow. But ultimately, with where it's at, I mean, things are broken. So either we need to see some change very, very quickly with the current guys, or let's start playing some different guys at different spots, move them around to get at least a little bit more fire, intensity. Thomas Booker, give him some more reps because, heck, it doesn't matter at this point with JD.
Yeah.
Like, it's crazy to say that, but whatever works at this point. And that's a miserable situation to be in. But, 2 weeks in, I think that ultimately that's where we're all looking at.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I totally agree in terms of the fact that, if people don't want to get pressure, if Bryce Huff doesn't want to get pressure for whatever reason, if he's incapable of getting pressure, then sure, try somebody else out because it can't be much worse. And if we see the film, again, we are not film experts, but if we see the film, what the heck is Vic Fangio looking at? He has to see the same thing, right? He's got to be like, I'm a genius defensive coordinator and I'm watching this. This is crazy bad. And you got to think there's got to be some changes coming up. Now, maybe he is a little more stubborn in the fact he wants to hold out, hoping that Huff, $17 million, hoping Josh Sweat brought him back instead of Reddick, hoping Jalen Carter and Jordan Davis, they can figure things out and fine. But the wheels can unravel pretty quickly. And the next 2 weeks are, suddenly very difficult games. The Saints was not supposed to be difficult. The Bucs was going to be, Baker in that offense. The defense, Todd Bowles, not bad. But it was not supposed to be two undefeated football teams that looked very, very good. And suddenly you're staring down the barrel of, you could lose the next two. Theoretically, if the same defense shows up the next 2 weeks, you're going to lose those games. And then you're 1-3, and it's all hell breaks loose, and people start freaking out, and we just don't want to go there. So Do
Please no.
something to show us that something is going to be better than what we've seen the past couple weeks on defense. That's all I ask for. So
on paper, worst case scenario felt like it was going to be 3-1. Quite honestly, going
worst
into
case scenario,
now, it's a
2-2 is like
play.
Please,
I'd be perfectly fine with 2-2. Would be perfectly fine. 1-3 still feels very much in play. I don't know. It's a different situation.
Renard says y'all said you had the best roster in the NFC East. I still think we do. You think Dallas's roster is better? You think Dallas is much better overall? We have a much better offense than Dallas.
Yes, yeah. The
Defense,
NFC East
toss up maybe.
Like, if you want optimism, the NFC East is still there for the taking. We could be 1-3 at the bye, and you won't be concerned. I mean, we'll be concerned, but you won't be like, oh gosh, the NFC East is unwinnable. Like we're just so far in the hole. Sorry, like Dallas could very easily get beat by Baltimore this week coming up. So, they're in a similar situation of maybe getting some losses early. And do they have some issues? Absolutely. They cannot run the ball. Certainly with Zeke Elliott, they can't run the ball. He is a immediate tackle, can't break a tackle to save his life, can't make anybody miss to save his life. So they're a one-dimensional team, and they got to be able to throw the ball. But as soon as you see that all of a sudden, hey, Saints, what they're going to do or what they did, curious to see Baltimore, but I would feel like it's going to be a similar situation, not, a blowout, but a similar situation of kind of have their way on that side. Then, there's questions. Like there's questions all around. The Commanders, okay, yeah, I mean, you make some plays, but ultimately, like, is that the answer there with Jaden Daniels and that team there? And then sure, the Giants are just like move on, I suppose. But they are what they are. So the NFC East is totally up for grabs. I wouldn't back away from that previous take.
VastaFlow13 says, much love, guys, but Josh don't say it can't get worse, because last year you said that when they changed defensive coordinators, and it did get worse when Matt Patricia, who was at the game on the Eagles sideline pregame, which was kind of weird. Did you think Bill Belichick, nobody talked about this. Why was Bill Belichick at that game? Why was he on the sideline pregame at that game? It made no sense. Unless he was there for like his little ESPN thingy, or...
Yeah, I was going to say...
It made no sense. It was very weird. It was like the Grim Reaper waiting outside your dying grandpa's house, just like kind of waiting for Sirianni. It's like,
It was.
That was weird, wasn't it? I thought it was weird.
I think it might have, and I could be wrong, I think it might have had something to do with his official Underdog sponsorship show and everything that he's got going on with them. So I know they're trying to like push it, and so like a lot of like primetime stuff.
Really?
But I don't know. But maybe just like show face and get him out there. But yes, timing of weird. That, talking about Belichick, the collapse, and Sirianni, it was very interesting. Zay even posted, I'm sure you saw it on his
it was story. Like, hey,
like right there, and then Zay's there. So like, oh, okay, interesting. He's right there on the sideline. Vastaful, I appreciate that. There's a little bit of a difference, I will say. I understand the thought process on that. When I said it can't get worse, you're totally right. I said it can't get worse with Sean Desai. It did get worse with Matt Patricia. If I say it can't get worse now, I mean, we're at numbers of Matt Patricia, like end of the season defense.
Yeah,
so it's like there's like a minuscule amount that we can get worse. Like we could barely get worse on some pass defense stats. You can't really get much worse in terms of like sacks and pressures and everything else. So I hear you. Like we don't want to jinx anything, but this is not us talking about, hey, we're 20th in the league in these stats. We're like 29th, 30th, 32nd in the major categories. So I don't think it can get worse.
Dylan Bryan says we have to split the next 2 weeks at minimum, or changes have to be made. Hopefully still grab a wild card spot, TBH. And agree, need to see what Rodgers has. Yeah, you got to split. And you have got to look competent against the Saints. I mean, I still think the Saints are a little bit overhyped, because I don't think their roster is as good as their score. And they did beat Carolina week 1, which I think is kind of that a lot of people are going to beat Carolina this year. But that young Kubiak play caller, their offensive coordinator, the son of Gary Kubiak, he's dialing it up. I mean, they are scheming Alvin Kamara beautifully with their run game. They're throwing the ball extremely well down the field, something they have completely been unable to do during the Derek Carr era. I mean, this is like 2019, 2018, peak Raider Derek Carr right now. And if they go out and they lay an egg against the Saints, it's going to get ugly. I mean, next week will be insane. It'll truly be insane. Like, you don't think we've hit rock bottom until you lose to the Saints next week after what happened in that Falcon game. It could get really bad. And I agree. The fact that hopefully Isaiah Rodgers just has a hand thing, right? And Josh and I, Josh, I mean, really close with Isaiah Rodgers, but we're not like, texting him all the time. It's more kind of like, I don't know how you would explain the relationship, but we're not close enough, nor do we want to ask him, what's going on, give us a little take. Like we're not doing that. So we don't know.
Right.
But I think the thought process from both of us is we hope, because we're big fans of Isaiah Rodgers, and we think he can play. He apparently was doing great during training camp, like Devin White was. So
for sure,
that means.
Yeah.
But we hope that it's just the hand. They want to make sure, and this coming week, you'll see Zay out there. They'll move Quinyon into the slot whenever they need to, maybe mix and match, whatever they got to do. But I think you got to put Isaiah Rodgers out there and just make sure you know what you have in him, because he's on such a cheap contract, and you could probably sign him for way cheaper than any of the other, elite corners in the league. If you were to light it up this year, you could still get him on a really big discount, Josh, but you got to know what you have in him first before you just go like, Q and Slay, whatever, it's going to be fine.
Yeah. We won't know unless he gets out there on the field. So unfortunately, that's the sad part as of right now. That I'm with you. I hope that it's the fact of they're just slow playing it with the injury and not rushing him back. But at this point, like, you got to hope you see him out there, even for this next week's game, because another week he had the surgery. At this point, it'll be 4 weeks post-surgery, post-op. So it should be enough time now where he can get out there, make plays. Even within camp, the common theme was not only, yes, he's playing well, but the speed was surprising everyone. Like you'd have AJ beating him by a step and Jalen making a throw, assuming it's going to happen. And next thing you know, he gets back to break it up, or same thing with Devontae Smith. And so it's like, because of that speed, Zay can take chances that other corners can't. Now he's going to get beat a couple times, and he did. We had some reports as far as like a double move or something like that. But on a defense that we're hoping and looking for maybe to show some more opportunism from as opposed to what we saw last year. I mean, I'm all for it. Get him out there, see what he could do. He's got some ability. He didn't have any of the rust from what we saw and heard training camp and preseason. So I'm all for it. He needs to be out there. He needs to play. Woe here saying Mans can't get worse is setting us back 2 decades at this point. I suppose, yeah. And by the way, I'm not saying like it can't get worse. I'm saying that, and we could definitely lose to the Saints. I'm not saying like it can get worse schedule record wise. I'm just saying, like, statistically, there's not a whole lot further to go down. Like, we're basically at rock bottom already. So that's the point there.
The one thing that is interesting is I appreciate the Philadelphia Force. I think it would be Forces. Is that it be? It would be Aces, Forces. Maybe
Aces, yeah. I don't know.
Oh,
actually.
yeah, probably Aces. Probably it. Why Forces? That was so stupid. Aces, definitely Aces. Get the likes up. There you go. We appreciate that. Yeah, give the show thumbs up. We're up to 154 likes with almost 600 people watching. Leadership on defense is interesting, though, right? Like if Jalen Carter is not taking that next step to be a leader, you wonder who is the leader. Because CJ is a leader, but I don't know if CJ Gardner-Johnson is the leader, right? He's the vocal leader. It'd be as if you were saying Draymond Green was the leader of the Golden State Warriors when you know it's Steph Curry. Like Steph Curry is the leader of the Golden State Warriors, but Draymond is kind of their tough guy. He's gonna stand up for people. He's gonna go above and beyond. And I think CJ's played well. He hadn't played great so far this year. Coverage has been a problem, obviously. But do we have a leader on defense? And right now, I mean, Josh Sweat, I talked about on my show, on the recap show, he was saying, we're kind of discombobulated. We're kind of, not on the same page. Who's the guy kind of like rallying him? I mean, BG, I guess that he kind of has to be. But you kind of want the leader of the defense to be like the best player on the defense. Fletcher Cox was the best player on the defense for so long. Like he had just defaulted to being that leader and also the main guy out there. They don't really have one right now, Josh. Is it Slay? I mean, I don't know.
I mean, even with the mistake that he made. But
yeah, a brutal one too. Like, why are we looking in the backfield on a 3rd down and 5 when you're in man coverage and your one job is to not give up a touchdown and let the guy get past you? I mean, terrible. Absolutely terrible. Really, really bad. It's plays like that where you can see why the fan base, there's a portion of the fan base that's fed up with Darius Slay because of the podcast, and he's always kind of jovial, which I like. I think he's a great player. I'm a big fan of Darius Slay. But it's plays like that where you just kind of like, man, like, come on. Like please. Like, we picks, big plays. They're all good, but just make sure we don't lose that game. And of course, that didn't happen.
No, and he started pressing, which he admitted, and that's what happens whenever you got a team that marches down the field and you're like, oh man, you start feeling the pressure, you start feeling the intensity.
Sure.
And
gotta make a play.
I thought I saw a look that we had seen before on film where they do run it inside. So he's looking in the backfield, is what he said.
Yes,
Next thing you know, he just jumps it and wide open. Way too easy, but he admitted it. Ultimately, though, like, yeah, I don't know. You say best player. I think Jalen Carter certainly has that potential.
He should be.
Is he the leader? Is he that vocal guy?
I don't think so right now.
Think so yet.
I don't think so yet.
A good bit. So yeah,
you know, up to meetings late.
For sure. I mean, honestly, with offense, and this is not knocking Kelsey, but like whenever we said, hey, okay, Kelsey's not here, I felt like that's not as big of a loss as it is for Fletcher Cox. And for the reasons that you mentioned there, it's like, okay, vocally, yes, Kelsey's a big name. You don't replace him, all that other stuff. But Cam Jurgens, I was like, he's going to be fine. He's going to be good. And even, you know, Kelsey's like, he's paving his own way and all this other stuff. Like, he doesn't have to be me. But with the offense, like, Jalen's going to take that next step of leadership. Saquon Barkley's in there. You see his leadership mentality. A.J. Brown's already been in there. So, like, the offense was going to be fine. You've got all those guys in there.
Yeah.
But defensively, that's where it came back to question is, who's that going to be? You have captains, yes, of Slay, and you have some guys that are still there from last year, but it's a lot of new faces or a lot of guys who are rookies, second year, a couple third year. But to your point, it's like respect is earned and not given. And there comes a territory of like, yes, you earn the respect, but also it's kind of natural that your better players or your best players get that captain spot and get that vocal leader. But you need them to have both. Like, they need to have the play style, but they also need to have that kind of aura or presence or vocal leadership to be able to say that and have those conversations with a team. And I don't know, maybe, you know, I think it's trying to find that out. Now, I will say that it does feel like there's at least a little bit more of some intensity on the defensive side. Sadly, we're not seeing that on the defensive line at all, but at least there's some more, you know, at least a couple instances of some hits or some plays that are made where you're like, you know what, whether it is CJ Gardner-Johnson, he's not going to take crap from anybody. So if we got a shoving or some pushing or anything like that, I mean, he's going to let you hear it and he's going to be in your face. So I do appreciate that within the secondary, but there's really got to be somebody that steps up and say, you know, like Fletch was telling JD, he's like, get mad, like do whatever you need to be mean and nasty. And, you know, love JD's jovial personality and everything else. But I sadly, it looks too much like he plays that way more often than not, of like, you know, you don't see a mean, nasty streak to him that you would see with Fletch. Fletch could be great after the game, but in the game, are you kidding me? You want to mess with Fletch? Like, there's a reason the run defense was so incredible. Like, he could turn it on and off where there's, oh, hey, there's run play. Well, there's Fletch making another stop. Pass down. There you go. He's getting through on the offensive line. He's making a sack or he's getting a pressure. Yeah. And right now, you don't seem to have somebody that can say, hey, you know what? I'm going to flip the switch and nobody's going to block me. And that's a huge concern. Again, like we opened up with the defensive line, I did not expect to be saying that with this defensive line and being the weak spot.
I've seen people say, why isn't Jelix Hunt playing? Put Jelix Hunt in. I agree, and I'm torn because, like, you know, why isn't Isaiah Rodgers, Devin White playing? Does that mean they're trash? But to me, it's like, if Jelix Hunt can't get on the field behind these pass rushers, then how good is he actually, right? And it goes to this comment by Gooby, which I don't want to, you know, go off on this tangent, but it's worth at least reading. How he said the worst last 4 years of nearly any GM in the NFL outside of a handful: Davis, Dean, Nolan Smith, Huff, Reddick, Walking, etc. This team is going under a controlled demolition, it feels. Now, I don't want to get to that point of Howie being the worst, because I think Howie has had some fantastic moves. Obviously, you know, signing all of his own players, I mean, in terms of AJ and Smitty and Dickerson and all the good pieces that you want on this team going forward, he's been able to keep. Quinyon Mitchell, I think, Jalen Hurts' contract, like, Howie has done a great job. But and the excuse has always been that they need more time, but we're getting to a point, Josh, where Jordan Davis, Nakobe Dean, Nolan Smith, Bryce Huff, I mean, those are three. Let's just take the draft picks there, and you throw in Jalen Carter, who again, is supposed to be like the best defensive player in that draft, and I don't know if we're there yet. But these guys got to show up, or else you're looking at truly 3 first-round draft picks who have been, besides Dean, busts because they're first-round draft picks. I mean, you
Yeah.
look at Kyle Hamilton being taken after Jordan Davis. The guy's an all-pro. He's the best safety in the league right now. And you just go, oh, my goodness. Now, I got to go back and look who was taken around the Nolan Smith time. But Nolan Smith has been pretty busty. I mean, again, I hate to say this because they need more time. We're not panicking, but we're just trying to be honest in the fact that, like, first-round draft picks, I know they're still hit or miss, but you got to hit on some. And we have not been hitting on many recently on the defensive side of the football.
I mean, that's what we were throwing out there as far as at the draft. And you know that I'm a big Nolan Smith supporter, but just the first name that jumps off, and yeah, I'm not saying that, but the first name that jumps off the board whenever you think about around Nolan Smith, or if you wanted to go a different direction, you could have gotten Brian Branch, I believe, right? He was like,
that's right,
4 picks after. It was like, was it early second round? I think he was right after. So we had the conversation, do you need a safety? You know, we had lost C.J. Gardner-Johnson at that point, and you're questioning who is that going to be. We had the Justin Evans and the drawing a blank. There was one other, and then Kevin Byard trade, and that didn't work out. So you never know, but you know, I'm believing in Jalen Carter. I think that there is I'm too.
Yes,
definitely. Yes. You know, making time for Nolan Smith, but he's got to get the reps for one, but he's also got to be able to show something and get more of those stops or more pressures with the pass rush. I think for run stopping, he's been serviceable. I mean, we compare it to some of the other edges, and he's been serviceable run stopping wise. So that's fine. But when we talk about getting after the passer, yeah, there's not many that we can go after and say that. So yeah, I know that we're not saying we're taking those as bust or completely redo, and I know that you said that as well. But it's also you expect this to be the strength of the team, and that's it right there. Unless they come out like gangbusters on this Sunday and really consecutive weeks, I mean, we're going to have to look at this honestly and go, you know what? Even if the scheme is not great, the players on the D line, like they're not the guys. And that'll be because we've had multiple defensive coordinators, and you're not getting as much out of them. Like Clint Hurtt, you know, like he's been proving, and I get everybody can knock on Fangio's scheme and all this stuff. That's perfectly fine. I don't necessarily prefer a bend but don't break. I like to dictate terms. I like to play aggressive. Like, all that's fine. But there's a certain point where you say, Vic Fangio got Christian Wilkins paid. Without Vic Fangio, Christian Wilkins did not get that contract. That was the defensive coordinator for Christian Wilkins. Same thing for Zach Sealer. And you go down the line with Akeem Hicks. There's guys in the interior. There's guys on the edge as well who have had good seasons with Vic Fangio. So it's not like that scheme puts a pass rusher in a terrible position to make plays. So then you start a little bit of self-reflection there and say, are these the guys? Or are these just the wrong guys for the scheme? But we know that Howie's always really kind of leaned towards that Fangio scheme anyway. So he's kind of drafting in that capacity in itself. So it's early. We'll say that, but
it's fun to just look at. I've been looking at this while you've been talking. This is the 2023 first round, just to kind of see, just to kind of look around, right? And you look around Jalen Carter, there isn't a lot. I mean, Jahmyr Gibbs, Jack Campbell, I think is a good player. Kalijah Canty's been injured a lot, and Jigba's not somebody that you really, needed in any way because of the wide receiver. But you do look at kind of round 30 with Nolan Smith, and Joey Porter Jr., I think, is a fantastic player. Laporta is a great tight end. This still has to grow here because I think there are some other names on this list, like a Foskey with the Saints, who, you got to kind of give him a little bit more time. Same goes for Nolan Smith, and Branch is there at 45. But, this is what you do 4 or 5 years down the line. We're not there yet, but you do look around and say, who are the hits, who are the misses? And right now, Nolan Smith seems like a miss. But if they just look competent against the Saints, this offense can score enough points. I think that's the main takeaway as I try and be positive to end the night is they're a catch away from winning this game. Right, and someone else had a comment. I saw it, but I didn't see. I forgot the name. But Smitty dropped a touchdown. That was a good play by Jesse Bates, but it should have been a touchdown. The field goal decision versus the go-for decision early on. 9 penalties. There were a lot of things happening that could have been different for the Eagles to win this game. We'd be feeling a lot different because you'd be 2-0. But if they can just look competent on defense, if they can just have a mediocre pass rush, if Jalen Carter and Jordan Davis can just be better than average, right? The offense is going to be fine. They look fine without A.J. Brown. And Jahan Dotson, it was basically Saquon Barkley and Devontae Smith, and that's it. And Jalen Hurts' legs, his most rushing yards since 2022. But besides that, we are literally just waiting for this defense to give us enough that way the offense doesn't have to carry us 100% of the time like they basically had to at the end of that game. And, of course, Jalen threw the pick. So I'm trying to be positive. And we talked a lot about recently drafted players tonight and a lot about coaches and a lot about schemes and a lot about different players. It can all switch on a dime. We can all go from Bryce Huff haters to Bryce Huff lovers. We can all go from Darius Slay haters to 1 pick 6 to steal the deal against the Saints. To base play. It can all change on a dime. But right now, it just feels like the film says it's not going to change on a dime, and it's going to be fascinating to see what the Eagle team looks like going forward for the remaining 16 games of this season.
It is. It's a lot of reasons to watch for the good and the bad. We'll see what they can do and turn around. Also, to the comment about Christian Wilkins that I made, Weedosaurus, I see the comment there. If Wilkins was good before Fangio, come on, dude. He was good, but he wasn't getting paid without Fangio. I'm sorry. He didn't have,
he's a hater.
Well, but he didn't have the sacks. He didn't have the sacks. He was not going to get paid what the Raiders paid him without that breakout season for the sacks. And then same from JM about Van Ginkel was a nobody before Fangio. I mean, he wasn't as big of a name. He wasn't going to get the contract that he did for free agency from Minnesota. So, same deal. Like, there's case in point multiple times of guys who showed out and had their career seasons under Fangio. So it's not to say that he's only putting all those guys in, bad spots and everything else. So, I don't know. The hope is that you can kind of increase this. I mean, even if we look at Miami last year, there was some shaky start. There was some kind of back and forth. I know that Fangio also dealt with some injuries, but able to get it, like humming better towards the middle of the season. So we're not giving up on that. I know you're not. We're still trying to be relatively optimistic, but also realistic. Needs to be much, much better. But, we hope that all of the material they went over, all the reps, everything else, Fangio saying we do as much as we can so that then they have it and we can do, and there's recall and we can adjust because we've repped, or practiced all the things that we need to. I mean, that's where we're at. Hopefully all the practice paid off because we need it to. But yeah, starts in the Big Easy, and the Big Easy is not going to be easy. We'll say that.
Here's the NFC standings, just because I think it's funny because, we all know what we all know the start of the season. Like, we know the top 5 teams, and yet your top 5 teams are the New Orleans Saints, the Vikings without their quarterback, the Seattle Seahawks, the Bucks, and the Commanders. And then, of course, the Falcons would be the next one up there. But Cardinals have looked good after almost beating the Bills in Week 1. Detroit looked pretty rough. Their offense looked really rough against the Bucks. The Cowboys obviously have struggled. The Niners are... When Brock Purdy doesn't have an Avengers-level cast around him, he looks like, Mr. Irrelevant. He looks like a pretty average quarterback. It's just wild to see the standings right now and knowing that it can all change. So we got to try and be a little bit positive.
Sam Darnold's the guy.
Sam Darnold looks pretty good. The Vikings look pretty good. I think right now, if you had to pick the 2 best teams, it'd be the Saints and the Vikings. Genuinely. The Saints and the Vikings are probably the 2 best teams. If you absolutely had to pick, you'd probably pick those 2. Will that be the case at the end of the year? I don't think so, but the Vikings offense looks really great, and their defense is very well coached, and the Saints offense looks really great, and their defense is really well coached. Those are the 2 big differences to me.
The NFC South minus, Carolina is what Carolina is.
Woo,
but the NFC South, I mean,
Carolina.
They're kind of legit, I mean, Baker Mayfield and that offense seem to be making some plays there. The defense with Todd Bowles, we got to work it out for us. I thought that would be the easier, not easy, but like an easier part of the schedule.
Sure.
Tough game with Tampa, playoff game, rematch, all that, but not so much anymore, as we're seeing.
I interned on a Charlotte's flagship station way back in college, the flagship of the Panthers or whatever, and most of those shows are still on. Like all the guys I work with, they're all still there. Can you imagine waking up every morning at 4 a.m. to be on the air at 6 a.m. from 6 to 10 to talk about the Carolina Panthers? Nope. Day after day after day. What a... Jeez, I feel so lucky to not be talking about the Carolina Panthers.
Owner, is that...
Holy cow.
Living the dream job.
Oh
knowing that your franchise is never... I mean, I don't... Unless you get a new owner, honestly. Like,
it's crazy.
It's terrible. That would be miserable. We talk about issues and concerns here, but that would be... My gosh.
PJ Vasquez with a 10. I think Thomas hit it earlier. It looks like they're thinking too much. The talent is there for a top 15 defense. Individually, our defensive groups are serviceable or better. I'm staying positive. There you go. So that would indicate you got to coach them up a little more, and they just need a little bit of time. I agree. I mean, on paper, we said it. This should be a top 15 defense. If they were 17th in both categories overall, it looks way different than last night. It really does. And I know they held the Falcons to only a handful of points. It was 21, but I think that the tape is showing that a much better offense, because Atlanta's still trying to figure things out on their own, could really do some damage. But I'm trying to stay positive too. I don't want to panic. I think it doesn't help that we haven't had a blowout win in a very long time since playing the Dolphins, which we went to that game last year. That might help. A 2-touchdown win might really help calm things down. Maybe they do it on Sunday. Who knows? Big Farts Jones. There you go. Hope. Okay.
Good name.
Hypothetically, they go 1-3 into the bye. They potentially fire Nick. Belichick hangs over the link like Teletubby's baby son. There you go. If they listen, Josh, let's just be 100% honest right now. If they're 1-3, and I don't know if they do it at 1-3, but if they have a losing record this year, obviously Sirianni is gone, and he's probably gone before the end of the year. So I don't think that's a hot take. I don't think that's crazy, and I do think it will be. I think it would be Bill Belichick. I mean, we have seen Howie Roseman do, and I praised him for this during the offseason, where he overcompensated. Right, secondary was really bad last year. Overcompensated to go ahead and get all these cornerbacks. You had like 15 entering camp. You had no wide receivers a couple of years ago. Overcompensate A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, right? Like, overcompensating has been the theme of Howie Roseman's, MO the past couple of seasons. And so to go from Sirianni, who most people are criticizing him as kind of dopey, kind of like, running down the sideline to, high five Cedar Johnson. He's just kind of a jovial guy, which works really well, or very fired up guy. Works well when you're winning. It's very bad when you're losing. The overcompensation, Josh, would be to go for Bill Belichick. And so I don't know if you do it at 1-3, but you would do it at 4-8, right? You would do it at 4-8 for sure. He would be gone at 4-8.
Yeah. It won't be at 1-3 bye week. Give him some time to adjust things, but absolutely with this roster, if it's 4-8, you're for sure making a move. I don't know. It's a whole nother conversation and
it's for another
day. But I don't know that. I mean, I'm not going with Bill Belichick. That's not my preference.
No, but I think it would be.
But I think you're probably right that realistically it ends up being Bill Belichick, and for different reasons that totally changes the press conferences, because then you're instead of
complete opposites.
Instead of Sirianni explaining things or talking in circles for 5 minutes, you're going to get 3-word answers, and maybe that's better. I don't know. But it would change the dynamic for sure. I mean, he's different persona, different aura about him. Defense hopefully would be better, you would assume. But that would change things.
I personally would want Bobby Slowick, however you say his last name. The Texans OC would be like that. That would be my choice, honestly. But again, we're not going to get to that point because the Eagles are going to be just fine, and it's not going to be a problem as we just give our nice, we're just going to calmly, they're going to be okay. Right now, Josh, how much money would you feel comfortable betting on the Eagles winning on Sunday? How much money of your own hard-earned, would you put $1,000 to win $2,000 on them winning on Sunday?
Oh my gosh. No. What is the pay? I didn't actually check what the official money line. I know it was the +3, but that probably makes it what, +140, +160, something like that. Honestly,
$500 to win $2,000?
I would not. No. The Eagles, if I'm going to bet, I would put it into a parlay, because you're going to get plus odds and then just use it with some other picks. I'm not confident enough to put a massive amount of money on one individual bet to say, hey, I'm betting $1,000 to win, 2,000 or 1,600, whatever it is. So no, I think that there's definitely a chance. I will say it again, just looking at the line where the money is, because the early money, I think, is 80% of the money is on the Saints. And if it keeps in that route, then
the NFL will rig it, right? It has to be, because they get the money.
Because 90% of the money line was on Philly against Atlanta, and Philly lost. So, hey, I'm just saying. But ultimately, we're not maybe at that early point to be able to put that type of money on there. But I would say, that, again, it's either going to be a close game or Philly could win. I still believe that.
Okay. All right. Well, I mean, not want to go with the outright bet, but, put it into a parlay, spoken like a true underdog fantasy spokesperson. Very well done. Use promo code Philly Special, right? Down below in the link. Use that parlay.
Yes.
I will say this, you and I text a lot. You are pretty good at the old underdog fantasy. I will say that.
Thank you.
It's pretty impressive, honestly. It's like, wow, okay, this guy's actually winning a lot of bets and making money. So
I appreciate it. It's actually been better on golf. So I seems to be my best sport so far was golf. But then with the season ending, now I'm kind of like, I know they started back up, but it's like, you don't really jump into it until honestly like next year. But college football, there's some other picks that way. So we'll see. But yeah,
Anthony
not
Perry
Eagle straight up.
Wrapping up today's show with a super chat saying, need A.J. Brown back soon. I don't think he's going to be back this week. Sirianni tried to make it like we're making 2 game plans today just to make sure. No, there's no way he plays this week. I think he'll play in the Buck game. I think that they're going to go for the Buck game. You mentioned maybe we get to the point where, you want to sit him until the bye week to get extra time. That's also possible, but it wouldn't matter if Jahan Dotson was relevant in any sort of way, right? If Jahan Dotson could give you 4 for 50 and, 5.8 yards per catch, whatever the number is, excuse me, right? That's actually worse. It's better than that. But then we wouldn't be talking. But he has been completely irrelevant. So it's wild. I feel bad for everyone who used a fantasy football bench roster spot on Jahan Dotson being like, I'm a Eagles fan. I know the secret. And like, goodness gracious, just trash. Just absolute trash.
You should have had Britton Covey.
Yeah,
he would have ended if they hadn't had the penalty. He would have had I think 7 catches for like
looks good.
I think like 7 catches for like 55 yards or 58 yards, something like that. I mean,
there's one player if Bill Belichick got hired, would not be leaving. Oh man, he would love him some Britton Covey. Yeah. Love him some Britton Covey. Oh man, good Mike Vrabel. Yeah, says Philly sports fan. Not defensive coordinator Mike Vrabel. I wonder if Mike Vrabel's just vibing this offseason, right? He's just collecting his paycheck for getting fired early and just chilling. I don't know what he's doing. He's just doing whatever Mike Vrabel does. So, all right, we're well over an hour. Obviously, pretty spirited here. We're pretty. That
was
pumped.
fun.
I think it'll be okay. I don't know if I'm ready to do a game prediction, but I don't know if I think the Eagles are going to win. But I'm hoping for competence. I'm hoping for competence. Let's just
yeah. Andrew R, I see the comment there too. Says Josh, I need some more picks. You helped me win some change Sunday night. Yes, there you go. I post that on X, by the way, or Twitter, whatever you want to call it. But if you're not following on Twitter or X, follow there. I usually post it every time before the games. So just if you feel free to tag along. But I will have some of those. I'm going to post also tomorrow because it's Thursday Night Football, so we got to have something to go off of. But yes, I will have that there. And also a reminder for everybody, I know you guys already know this, but Thomas and I will be live streaming for the game.
Yep.
Early kickoff. It'll be I'm looking forward to that.
1 p.m. on a Sunday
get this out of the way early. Maybe surprise the people with a win. Then we get to go and have the rest of the day. So
yeah, not having your Sunday ruined. That'd be great. I'd love that.
Please.
So we'll see.
Much
All
better.
right. For Josh Davis, I'm Thomas Mott. We're trying to make sure we don't ruin your Wednesdays. Hope you guys have a great rest of your evening. We'll have shows probably coming out tomorrow. If you didn't watch my show earlier, check that out. Josh's recap is up. Subscribe. Do all the things that you need to do. Just go and be nice to your family tonight, right? The Birds losing is not the end of the world. Hopefully we can have a nice, happy Sunday and be 2-1 and be completely different about where we're at. So we'll see. See you guys.
Go Birds.